Hello, 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 and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap. Sorry there for a little bit of a delay. Normally we start this thing around 6:45, but because of some technical issues with trying to go live on Facebook, a little bit delayed today. No, don't worry, this show's not canceled. I know we were off last week due to the fact that I was sick and I couldn't come into work, so that's why we didn't have a show last week. Big thanks to everyone that tunes in each and every week. Big week this week, obviously. It's kind of a wrap-up on the football season. Obviously, we'll talk bowl games with Virginia Tech later on, but let's get into that exact point. The Commonwealth Cup, the 105th meeting between Virginia and Virginia Tech, took place last Saturday, 8 o'clock on the ACC Network, primetime. Cold as ever could be out there in Blacksburg, but the Virginia Tech fans and Virginia fans that traveled packed out the stadium and put on a spectacle of how good this rivalry is, how good the brand of football is in Virginia, and that college football does matter in the ACC, right? So that was great to see. Let's just kind of jump into the Commonwealth Cup. Because the Virginia Tech Hokies, they win it. They take this one 37-17, a 20-point win using a third-string quarterback in Pop Watson. He takes down Tony Muskett, who got his first start of the season. Pop Watson looked incredible in his first start. Redshirt freshman, sat out all last year, has been the third team, has been the scout quarterback all season long. The big talk all week was about, how confident he was going into this game and how much confidence he had in this matchup. Threw for 254 yards, rushed for a score, threw for a score, was able to connect downfield on deep balls, something that Virginia Tech has struggled with all season long. While on the flip side of the coin, Tony Muskett all season has been the guy that fans have been clamoring for, that, let's get Tony Muskett in there. He'd gotten so much play time and, garbage time for UVA and put some touchdowns on the board against really good opponents. So, finally, Tony Elliott decided to go with Muskett, and quite frankly, he really struggled. Threw for 178 yards, threw 2 picks, both of which were really bad interceptions, overthrows, and I think they were both overthrows that led to 2 interceptions, but he did rush for 62 yards and 2 scores. He was the leading rusher for the Cavaliers on Saturday. As for Virginia Tech, Tootin, welcome back, right? He had a couple of weeks with some injuries and really wasn't himself that we saw early on in the season with Virginia Tech when he was healthy. We saw that on Saturday against UVA, rushed for 124 yards, broke that big touchdown run at the end of the game that kind of sealed the win for Virginia Tech. He finished with 2 rushing scores. Tyree had the most carries as a running back. Of course, Tyree normally plays receiver for UVA, but he had 8 carries for 18 yards. And so, as you can tell, the UVA attack, they were trying to go a lot of read option with Muskett. The Virginia Tech defense played incredible. The offense looked good. And it was kind of what, we kind of expected to see out of this game if you were to have previewed it, at the start of the season. At the end of the day, though, UVA was outgained 456 yards to 274, and that was because Virginia Tech had a lot of big plays, a lot of 20-plus yard plays in this matchup. They ran 7 more plays than Virginia Tech did in this game, but they were outgained by almost 200 yards. Virginia Tech had those big chunk plays in this matchup, and that was, kind of the difference maker in this one. And with it, of course, Virginia Tech goes bowling, while UVA, their season comes to an end. Let's check out some of these highlights as I can continue to kind of talk about this matchup that took place at Lane Stadium on Saturday. As mentioned, this atmosphere, unfortunately, I was not able to be there because I was covering Richmond's playoff game right here over at Robins Stadium. But look at the crowd. A lot of times in this game, in the past, we've seen maybe the students not show up. And I think a lot of that was because they played this game on Friday there for a few years in a row, and the attendance wasn't as well. But on Saturday night, man, they packed it out. The atmosphere was as good as you could ever expect. And it kind of just gives, it gives you that sense of, Virginia Tech has this great fan base, and it's almost like they deserve to have a winning product on the field with how much their fan base supports the program. But and that we just haven't really seen that. We'll get into kind of a full picture idea here in a second. I want to stay on the game a little bit, though. Virginia Tech, as you can see there, Musket with the big bad overthrow led to some turnovers, and Virginia Tech was able to capitalize. What I really liked in this game out of Virginia Tech is, they used their timeouts. They were aggressive going into halftime and coming out of halftime. We hadn't seen that with Coach Pry this season. A lot of times it was, taking leads into the break, not using those timeouts, trying to get an extra score. And we saw that out of Virginia Tech this past game on Saturday night. And what it led to was a 19th win over UVA in 20 years. 23 out of the last 25. In the past 2 decades, Virginia has only beaten Virginia Tech once. That was, of course, with maybe one of their best quarterbacks in history in Bryce Perkins. And what we saw in this game was, 2 different programs that are kind of in a similar spot. Not quite sure where their identity is with their coach, if they like their coach, if they don't like their coach. Both of these programs are kind of finishing the year on the same note. For Virginia Tech, it's a season of what-ifs, right? It's a season of, what exactly could have happened if everything went right. Whereas for UVA, it was a situation of they started the season out so strong and then ended up losing 6 out of their last 7 games, and it really leaves a sour taste in your mouth, despite the fact that the Cavaliers were able to surpass their win total by 2 games last season and nearly match their win total from the past 2 seasons. But at the end of the day, it's a Virginia Tech win 37-17. Before we can continue these thoughts on the season for Virginia Tech in Virginia, how about we tune in to what head coach Brent Pry had to say following this game? A big win that put Virginia Tech in bowl eligibility and extends their season. Another bowl game coming their way and kind of lifts this team up after a couple of disappointing losses, even though they had some injuries at the key quarterback position. Here's what head coach Brent Pry had to say following the win over Virginia on Saturday.
Tonight, so happy for our football team, and a resilient bunch that has battled each and every week and hasn't come out on top of it as much as we would have liked. But to get this win, to keep that Commonwealth Cup here in Blacksburg, to get bowl eligible back-to-back years, another sellout crowd. They didn't let the weather bother them. It was awesome to see that, see everybody out there. I know we'll travel well. We'll be an attractive choice. Go back bowling, get these extra practices. I really want a special shout out to our seniors. You talk about a group that a lot of these guys went through COVID, went through a coaching change. Some of them transferred in. Just a lot, ups and downs. And as I mentioned, resilient and close, a great brotherhood. To come out here tonight and perform the way they did, they stepped up. We had a third-team quarterback leading the charge, and I thought the way the defense, the rest of the guys on offense, and the kicking game stepped up to complement what Pop did tonight. So it was a good night for Hokie Nation.
So there you have it. That was Brent Pry following the Virginia Tech win over Virginia 37-17. Brent Pry moves to 2-0 against the Cavaliers. That's something that it seems like in Blacksburg, if you don't beat UVA, it's a quick ticket out of there, as we saw with Justin Fuente, who is the only coach to have lost a game against the Cavaliers in the past 2 decades. And with that being said, he brought up a really good point. Some of those seniors on this team, and I know a lot of them that were honored on Saturday night were, transfers that came into the program, but some of those guys had been around in the transition from Justin Fuente into COVID, then into Brent Pry, a new regime. And, there has been buy-in from this Virginia Tech team. And although this big stat all season has been about how Virginia Tech has not won one possession ball games, and they're 11 out of 12 they've lost, or whatever that stat is, that they can't win the one possession ball games, and a lot of that probably comes down to coaching. Not once, this season, or last, really, that it feel like the team quit. And that's what's interesting about, where the Virginia Tech football program is, because I think a lot of the fans expect, everyone expected Virginia Tech to be better this year. National media, local media, that they were voted high in the ACC preseason rankings. Just about everyone was expecting big things out of a team that returned 20 of 22 starters, the majority of their starters. Don't know what the exact number is. But one thing about them, despite the fact that they didn't live up to the expectations and they lost so many one-possession ball games, this team never looked like they gave up on each other. The culture in Blacksburg feels better than it was underneath Justin Fuente, hands down. I mean, you're looking at a Virginia Tech team that coming off of a tough road loss where you're using a third-string quarterback to Duke, to come home and get a blowout, I'll say it, 17-plus points, a 20-point win over UVA at home, and to get that rebuy and to not give up on the season and to want to go to a bowl game. That was the feeling you got for Virginia Tech. There's some pride, and it's a cohesive locker room. It seems like so far there has been a couple of transfer portal admissions, especially today. We've seen 2 guys from the defensive line announce that they would like to go into the portal. But what's interesting about this Virginia Tech team, I think, is that there has been buy-in despite the tough losses, despite the fact that they really haven't lived up to expectations. It never looked like Virginia Tech, kind of quit on the field, which I think is commendable to the coaching staff, despite the fact that coaching staff, might be the reason that they lost some of those one-possession ball games. Turning the coin now to talk about Virginia a little bit. Not quite the season they were expecting to have. They entered the year cautiously optimistic. Last season, they finished 3-9. The year before that, they, of course, had the tragedy, so that kind of made the season a little different for them. They didn't play their last 2 games of the year, so you didn't get a real good feel for Tony Elliott in year 1. He, of course, inherited a bowl football team. Bronco Mendenhall in his final year, the Cavaliers finished 6-6. And since then, the Cavs now have finished with 3 wins, and now 5 wins. They had a chance to go bowling, and I think if UVA, gets that monkey off their bat and they beat Virginia Tech on the road and go to a bowl game, the way that we're looking at the UVA season is entirely different than how we're looking at it now with the 20-point loss to the team in Blacksburg, right? The fact that they lose that game again in a season where I don't know how high the expectations were, but the Cavaliers finished higher in the ACC standings and they were projected by the ACC media at Media Day. They finished higher than I voted them at ACC Media Day. So that's been interesting to see how their season has progresses. And what's interesting is the fan base following that loss has not been kind to Tony Elliott. What I've seen online on these message boards is saying that maybe he's not the guy. But the fact of the matter is, UVA is going in the right direction. Granted, they were 6-6 when Tony Elliott took over the year prior. 3 wins, now 5. They're moving in the right direction, and the recruiting classes have been impressive. Tony Elliott's been recruiting the Richmond, Virginia area immensely. There's so many guys in our area that have committed to Virginia, and it'll be interesting to see as he continues to build a program over there in Charlottesville where this program can go to. Obviously, Elliott had so much success at Clemson. He knows what it takes to build a winning culture, and despite the fact that they didn't live up to the expectations that maybe the fans had, they definitely exceeded the national expectations. And I kind of hope that Tony Elliott gets more leeway. I hope that Tony Elliott gets that leash to kind of be himself and to let loose. And we'll see how the signing class looks tomorrow, as tomorrow is National Signing Day. But this is what head coach Tony Elliott had to say following the loss to the Hokies this past Saturday inside Lane Stadium.
That I felt like where I let them down was I didn't have them ready to play with the right level of discipline and execution. And I thought emotionally they got a better understanding of what rivalry means. So I think emotionally they were ready. They were ready to play because last year we didn't have much emotion when we played in this game. And so I thought that was there, but just execution and not It's 1 or 2 plays, right? 1 or 2 plays can turn the tide in the game, and we didn't have the right discipline on certain plays, and that's on me. I got to go get.
So there you go. The Cavaliers finished their season 5-7. They will not be going to a bowl game this year. There were some ups and downs, losing 6 of their last 7. Anthony Calandria also entered the transfer portal over the weekend. Tony Muskett, he no longer has eligibility. He'll be graduating and leaving the program, hoping to play pro ball. And so now there's not a quarterback in Charlottesville. It'll be interesting to see what next year looks like if they try to bring somebody in. If they have a recruit, to be completely honest with you, I don't know who the third-string quarterback is for the Cavaliers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next with Tony Elliott, what this transfer portal session looks like for the Cavs, how many guys leave, how many guys come in. It's going to look like a different team next year, especially with Calandria wanting to leave. I'm curious to know if maybe he would have stuck around if he doesn't get benched against the Hokies on Saturday. If he starts all 12 games. Obviously did not have the numbers he had last year in terms of touchdowns to interceptions. He had a real bad problem throwing picks this year. And, of course, so they ended up benching him. I wonder if he would have stuck around if they start him and, he gets that last option, or if he felt betrayed on Saturday. And that's the reason he decided to enter the transfer portal. As for Virginia Tech, 6-6, they're going bowling. Opportunity to match last year's total. And we'll see what they do in the transfer portal as well. They did a really good job bringing in guys. And so far, their recruiting class isn't that flashy. It's somewhere like 6th or 7th best in the ACC. A lot of 3 stars. Couple of guys from the Richmond area have already committed. So we'll see what they do in the portal, see if they get better there. For both of these programs, when they entered the year, and this is what I wanted to get at earlier, these programs are kind of where they're at now in year 3 for both Virginia and Virginia Tech, as they were when they took over the program, right? When Bronco Mendenhall left, just about the entire team transferred out of UVA. Tony Elliott had to come in, and now he's kind of brought them back to where Bronco Mendenhall left them off, right? And that's not such a bad thing. You had to build it back up to that point, right? And so now he's at a situation of, the Cavs are kind of in the same spot as they were when Bronco Mendenhall had his final season at 6-6. As for Virginia Tech, they're kind of at that same place that Justin Fuente left the team at, a 6-6 type of program. I know things were weird with COVID, and that's kind of part of the reason that Fuente left, and they declined the bowl bid, but Brent Pry in year 1 only wins a few games, and now he's kind of brought him back up to that 500 team. Now, the question that I pose to all of you is, can Tony Elliott take the Cavaliers to the next level? Can Brent Pry take the Virginia Tech Hokies to the next level? I think both coaches have done a good job of bringing the program back to where it was in the final year of their previous coaches. It'll be interesting to see if either coach can take them now to that next level, to that next level that both programs fired their head coaches for, that they want to get to. And that's kind of a realization I had today when looking, at past seasons and stuff, that this UVA team, at this point kind of feels like that last Bronco Mendenhall season. This Virginia Tech team kind of sitting at 500 with expectations kind of feels like those Justin Fuente teams. So now with a couple of recruiting classes under their belt, just about every guy on the roster next year, in terms of being a recruit at a high school, it'll be all Brent Pry's guys. It'll be all Tony Elliott guys. Year 4 will say a lot. I think both coaches stick around. Head coaches, we'll see if any offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators change for the Cavs or Hokies, but that's kind of the wrap. That's kind of where I'm at with both these programs. That's kind of the wrap on the college football season for both the Cavs and Hokies. Obviously, bowl game season's kind of strange. I don't think Virginia Tech has anybody that's like a guaranteed first rounder. I think Antoine Powell-Ryland's probably a top 3 guy, top 3 round guy. Tootin's probably the same. I think they would both benefit from playing in the bowl game. So I'm expecting a full cast of characters, unless Drones elects to go to the transfer portal, which I kind of could see happening, especially with how much love Pop Watson has right now, or Pop Watson may be trying to go to the portal now that he has some tape to try to get into a better situation. And so I'm thinking that the Hokies will have just about everyone at their disposal for their bowl game come at the end of December. And, of course, we'll talk about that bowl game later on. But let's continue on here and, get through the rest of what happened. I know that was a lot, Virginia Tech and Virginia, but it's the Commonwealth clash, baby. I mean, we got to talk about it, right? So Richmond, their season comes to an end. They fall in the first round of the FCS playoffs to Lehigh, 20-16. Lehigh, of course, was the Patriot League champion. The Richmond Spiders were the CAA champion. Richmond next season plays in the Patriot League. So this was kind of a preview of maybe the type of level of play that Richmond can expect to play against next season. And they had an opportunity to win this game big time. They were up 16-7 in this game. Lehigh had some huge plays late that kind of doomed them. A big fourth quarter for Lehigh. Jeffrey Jamil had an incredible touchdown catch. And it was a couple of big strikes that was the difference in this matchup. What's interesting about this Richmond into the year, and we just kind of talked about Anthony Calandria leaving UVA. Richmond has their three best players have entered the transfer portal, and one of their best quarterbacks today, since I got off air, entered the transfer portal. And so what's different about, obviously, UVA and Richmond is, you almost feel good for Camden Coleman. It's the nature of the business now, right? And it stinks. Camden Coleman had an incredible year for Richmond, took them from 0-2. He started getting some starts. They went on 10-game tear. He won Conference Player of the Week awards all over the place. Zachary Palmer-Smith had over 1,400 yards rushing this season. And then their best hard-hitting safety, Matthew Traynor, all had incredible years. But because they had such great years, they've now entered the transfer portal and will go to greener pastures and probably play at the FBS level because those guys have dreams of playing in the NFL. And quite frankly, there's only been a handful of players ever to play in the NFL from the University of Richmond. It's possible. Don't get me wrong. It's possible. But these guys now, because they had such great seasons, are going to leave the program to try to get money and NIL. They have an opportunity to make money playing football now, more than here in Richmond. And so that's kind of the flip side of the coin here with this transfer portal is that a team like Virginia and Virginia Tech are losing players that are leaving the team because that team didn't do well enough or they need more playing time, whereas these guys shined in their positions, and they now have an opportunity to make money playing at the FBS level. But great season for Richmond. Third straight NCAA appearance for Russ Huseman. And I think that's another good example of a coach that can build a culture and then find success. If you put pieces around a coach and give him some time, he can develop something special. And that's what head coach Russ Huseman has been able to do. Missed the playoffs his first 5 years. There were clamorings that maybe Richmond was going to go with a different head coach with, obviously the success that Richmond has had at the FCS level. But Huseman comes in, 3 straight appearances, 2-time CAA champion now, back-to-back years. Disappointing into the year. Obviously missed out on that bye week. I'm sure they would have loved to have that bye now looking back at it. But it's the situation that they're in now, and they go into the offseason, and hopefully they'll probably hit the portal now too as they try to replace these guys that have entered their names. But again, it's not necessarily a situation that they're definitely leaving. There's a possibility they come back, right? And so with that said, moving our attention over to Virginia Union and Randolph-Macon. They are also alive in the playoffs. Virginia Union will play on the road at Valdosta State, an 11-0 Valdosta State team. Union's having their best season in school history. Never have they made it this far in the playoffs. Never have they probably had this much talent on one team. They dominate Lenore Ryan on the road last week, and it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of keep this thing going and have a chance to play in the NCAA semifinals. If they win on Saturday, they will have a chance to play for an NCAA championship in theory, which is just incredible for Virginia Union and Alvin Parker over there. I think everyone here in Richmond's really excited about it. And Randolph-Macon, they're alive in the D3 playoffs as well. They will be in Salisbury, a team that's undefeated, the Seagulls. They'll play them on Saturday as well. Both of those games you can watch on ESPN+. All right, moving our attention now to a little NFL football. The Commanders back in the win column after a couple of shaky weeks for the Commanders. They win 42-19 against the Titans. A 23-point win that looks way bigger than it is, doesn't it? It's only a 3-score win, but it looks like even more of a blowout. Jaden Daniels looked like the Jaden Daniels we had saw early on. 25 for 30. That's unheard of. 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Finally got their running game back. Rodriguez nearly had a 100-yard day. Brian Robinson had a 100-yard day. They held the Titans to just 35 yards rushing. And we finally saw Terry McLaurin back into the offense after a couple of weeks of him kind of being pretty silent. So the Commanders right back where they need to be. They have a 71% chance to make the playoffs as it stands right now. They have a bye this week, and then their remaining schedule includes the Saints, which they should win, a very tough Eagles game, Falcons matchup, and a rematch against the Cowboys. They, of course, lost to the Cowboys, so it's kind of still up in the air if Washington can make the playoffs. They definitely have the talent. I'm expecting them to. 71% chance, according to ESPN. So we'll see if that continues there for them. And then last but not least, we will talk a little state semifinal matchups. This week for VHSL, we have 3 teams still alive. Big congratulations to Verina in the 4A playoffs. They took down Dinwiddie on Saturday. I was out at that game, packed house. I mean, there was probably 5,000 or 6,000 people at that game. Great atmosphere for some football out at Dinwiddie, as always. And give credit to Verina. They traveled really well. A lot of fans on the away side to cheer on the Blue Devils, and they'll now take on a team from the DMV area. In 5A, LC Bird is in action. They'll be taking on Briar Woods, and will be interesting to see how they do. They went on the road to Fleming last Saturday, a team that looked like the favorite to win probably the state championship in 5A, and it was just a defensive battle. They won it 10-7. LC Bird's lone touchdown was a pick 6 to kind of give you an idea of a slobber knocker of a game that it was out there in Roanoke. And then in Class 1, Essex took down Rappahannock on Saturday. They are our other area team still alive in the high school football playoffs. 3 teams remain, and all 3 have a chance to punch their ticket to a state championship game appearance this weekend. Can't wait to see that. We'll be on the sidelines of the Verina game that's set to take place at 2 o'clock on Saturday. I'll have the highlights for you on Saturday night, and then we'll also have the highlights from the LC Bird game, and we're working on trying to get the highlights from the Essex game as well. Hopefully we'll be able to get those to you. But busy week. Football's starting to close its doors. This is probably one of the last times we'll talk football here on the Nightcap as we kind of shift things into basketball season. I looked at the schedule tonight. High schools are starting to have their first basketball games of the year, so we're switching quickly from football to basketball. Crossover season was busy. Obviously, VCU will be in action tomorrow night at home at the Siegel Center. I'll be out there. We'll have highlights, of course, at 11 o'clock on 8 News. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of 8 Sports Nightcap. Again, apologies for not being on last week. I was sick, had to take the day off. But now we're back and better than ever. We should have regularly scheduled program, 6:45 every Tuesday. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. I know we were a little late starting today due to some technical problems. But we got to figure it out. Thank you guys for tuning in each and every week. If you want for me to discuss any topics, feel free to leave your comments in the Facebook section for next week. But that's going to wrap things up for another edition of 8 Sports Nightcap. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next week, 6:45, and I'll see you tonight at 11 o'clock as we continue to preview a busy week in the world of sports here in Virginia. We'll talk the all-ACC teams that were released today for Virginia Tech and Virginia, and then we'll do some more preview from Virginia Union's big NCAA quarterfinal matchup. That's tonight at 11 o'clock. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.